evening from New York. Despite the right's passionate attempt to stop him, today President Obama pulled it off. In our fifth story on the countdown tonight, the president beamed his words and images directly into the classrooms and thus the minds of America's 60 million defenseless school children. They were instantly assimilated into the Borg collective. I'm sorry, I meant instantly indoctrinated. I meant instantly aware that that wasn't Spider-Man talking. The speech worked so well, some grown-ups were indoctrinated, Republican grown-ups even. Former House Speaker Gingrich, after reading Obama's speech over a nice, refreshing glass of Kool-Aid, said, quote, "It's a good speech. I recommend it to everybody if you have any doubts." Laura Bush, former teacher, and Michelle Malkin has warned us all about the teachers. Quote, "I think there is a place for the President of the United States to talk to school children and encourage school children." The National Review's Jim Garrity, Obama's school speech is the finest of his presidency. Karl Rove said the president must have changed his speech from its first draft of evil. And Florida's GOP chairman revealed to his evidence that the speech was changed.
It's an upbeat speech, but is it the one the president was always going to give? You know, the White House should not have been involved in writing lesson plans.
So you suspect that this isn't really the speech that he was going to give?
No, because clearly last week there was a plan with the Department of Education. When you ask students to write a letter to the president of how we can help you with your new ideas, Mr. President, that is leading the students in an effort to push the president's agenda.
They did change the lesson plan, but you have no information that the White House actually changed the text of the speech. You don't have any inside knowledge of that.
No, I don't.
No, I know. Those terrible letters in which kids were supposed to write to Obama and tell him they would help him by staying in school and listening to their parents. Only a handful of the perceptive, like Lou Dobbs, saw that today's speech, the secretly evil speech, was still indoctrination. But it took Boss Limbaugh to explain why. Because urging kids to take personal responsibility for their futures, to drop their excuses and seize on the opportunity of education, amounts to robbing them of their right to be losers. A right Mr. Limbaugh will always defend. Quote, "Not even going to allow personal responsibility in your lifestyle. You're going to have that dictated to you, too. That's why the speech to kids today about personal responsibility is a trick, a scam." We will survey specific Republican complaints about the speech presently, but first some obvious examples of passages that the rabid right wing would naturally find objectionable. For instance, President Obama explained why education shapes not just individual futures, but the future of the country.
What you're learning in school today will determine whether we as a nation can meet our greatest challenges in the future. You'll need the knowledge and problem-solving skills you learn in science and math to cure diseases like cancer and AIDS, and to develop new energy technologies and protect our environment.
Curing AIDS, protecting the environment, bad enough to promote that kind of liberal, progressive agenda, but he wants to do it using this science stuff. Obama also rejected right-wing staples such as poverty and discrimination in favor of progressive pet causes like equality and thinking.
You'll need the insights and critical thinking skills you gain in history and social studies to fight poverty and homelessness, crime and discrimination, and make our nation more fair and more free.
Time now to turn to MSNBC political analyst Howard Feynman, also senior Washington correspondent, political columnist of Newsweek magazine. Good evening, Howard.
Hi, Keith.
Did you watch today? Are you one of us now, Brother Feynman?
I did, and I am. And I want you to know, Brother Keith, that I'm going to work really hard this fall on my reporting and my analysis, and I'm not going to quit, because that would not only disappoint me and my family, but this broadcast and our country.
Good, because staying in school is apparently only a Democrat. How foolish does this look now that this speech has been delivered, and this Florida GOP chairman who pushed the idea, oh, this is a second speech, when confronted with the question, what's your evidence that there was another speech earlier, says, I don't know.
Well, you know, you're only as good as your sources, I admit, but the White House sources I have insist that the speech was not changed. Yes, the lesson plans were, as Suzanne Malveaux said on CNN, but not the speech itself. And this isn't silly. There's an undertone of fear here among certain parts of the country that you have to look at and examine closely when you see this kind of reaction. I mean, to object to the idea that the president is calling on kids to work hard in school and be proud of themselves and do the right thing is crazy. And for Rush Limbaugh to say that it's somehow unpatriotic, to say that it's patriotic to stay in school, doesn't make sense, especially when, back in the Bush administration, they accused everybody of unpatriotic activity if they so much as dared to question the president's conduct of the war, for example.
And going back further, of course, it was the first President Bush who asked kids to write to him, telling him how they could help him. And Mr. Greer here has shown up at schools without parental permission, without making any kind of official quality to this, has given talks that have pushed his political agenda. According to the Orlando Sentinel, this included jokes about Hillary Clinton. So how is the rights indoctrination effort going in schools today?
Well, I don't think very well, and I think it's important to distinguish between the activist right, or some parts of the activist right that really have a deep-seated fear of this president on many levels, policy, personal, geographical, you name it, and the Republican Party. And leaders of the Republican Party, people who care about the future of the party, many of whom not only backed off, but never got in the fray to begin with, and once they saw the speech, as you showed in the setup, were pretty supportive of it.
But that was basically what he told the kids today was a very traditional conservative speech. It touched the age-old complaint from the right that poverty, discrimination, personal circumstances do not excuse failure, let alone excuse bad behavior. Why can't the right not rejoice when they get what they want, especially from a Democratic, even a liberal president?
Well, it's because they're hearing it from Barack Obama. That's the reason. This speech was a as you quoted people saying, from the right, from the National Review and elsewhere, a very wonderful speech because it focused on individualism. It focused on family responsibility. It focused on measurable benchmarks of achievement. It focused on patriotism. It focused on the future. It focused on innovation. That was a speech that any Republican president that I can think of, including both Bushes and Ronald Reagan, would have been proud to give, and in some respects, in other words, did give.
Does the Republican Party risk harming itself by attacking what used to be, as you suggest, mainstream American events, like the president speaking to school children? Never mind the message, just the venue. And if they succeed in undermining that kind of, traditionally apolitical event, how do they govern in the future if they ever manage to return to power?
Well, that's why I think some of them came out making supportive statements, including Laura Bush, including Karl Rove, including Newt Gingrich, who are three people who cared about and do care about the institutional future of the Republican Party, and also, by the way, are identified with a brand of sort of big government conservatism, if you will, or a values conservatism in government. Don't forget, both Bush presidencies tried to lay down markers on education. They cared about education. They tried to make a mark as so-called compassionate conservatives about that. This is something that George W. was proud of down as governor of Texas. So they care about this kind of thing. That's why you're hearing people who want to position the Republican Party, again, as a compassionate force in using government to foster individual responsibility. That was Obama. Obama stole the message of compassionate conservatism that the Bushes ran on.
MSNBC political analyst Howard Fineman, also of Newsweek, of course. As ever, great thanks for your time, Howard.
Thank you, Keith.